Beruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Kuf Lamed Gimel Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the bottom at the new Mishnah. Our Mishnah discusses the procedures of the Bris Milah and their permissibility on Shabbos. Says the Mishnah, Oisin kol tzarchei Milah b'Shabbos. Here the Mishnah brings a klal, as we saw before at the end of the previous parak, that we do all of the necessities for the Bris Milah, even on Shabbos, when it's going to be Bizmana on the 8th day. Moy halin uporin. The 2 steps of the mitzvahs milah is one, removing the orla, which is a thick skin that covers the atara. And the second part is then, there's a thin membrane underneath that must be then severed and pulled back. So that's the idea of parin, milashon of being megale the atara. Both those things, of course, can be done as mitzvahs milah on Shabbos. Then it says umoitzitzin. Moitzin is drawing the blood. Here we're talking about that the blood should not coagulate, and therefore it requires to draw the blood out. V'noisin aleh isplanis v'chamoin, and one can place a bandage with cumin on the area of the milah. Im lo shochach me'erev Shabbos, if you did not grind the cumin on Erev Shabbos, which was a malacha of techina, lo yes b'shina v'noisen, he should do a shinui by taking the cumin in his mouth and chewing on it, grinding it that way, and then placing it on the place, on the makom of the milah. Im lo toraf yayin v'shem be'erev Shabbos, which is rabbinically prohibited to then mix very, very, very well, beat wine together with oil, because it appears that one's going to put that in a pot and cook with it, as we saw in Daf Kuf Tes Amud Aleph. The Gemara spoke about that as well. Then yinasein ze ba'atzma v'ze ba'atzma, then place the wine and the oil separately on the place of the Bris Milah as medicinal purpose. Ve'ein oisin lo chaluk lechatchila, they would put a beged, a chaluk, they would make a chaluk to be put on the place of the Bris Milah that was open-ended, and they would wrap it around and put it as a beged. If they did not, they should not do this lichatchila. That means they should not do this, make this beged on Shabbos, because this would be a tikkun. Here we're not talking about any medicinal purposes here, it's so that should not have then the skin come back, whereby he'll have to then do the procedure of Bris Milah again. So to prevent the skin from going back to its original place, they would put this beged, this chaluk, and one cannot then fashion the chaluk on Shabbos, because that would be making a kli. Aval korech ale smartut, instead he should take a small beged and he should wrap it around that area. Im lo hiskim erev Shabbos, if he doesn't have it present where the nimol is located already from erev Shabbos, then korech al etzboi umevi va'afilu mechatzer acheres. Then he can tie it around his finger and bring it from even another chatzer, even if it's not mu'reves, for the purpose of then placing it on the makom of the milah. On Daf Kuf Lamed Gimel Amud Beis says the Gemara right away, asking Michti Ketani Kulhu. Our Mishnah had already stated all of the particulars, all of the details and procedures that says that it's then mutter to be done on Shabbos. So what does it mean when the Mishnah begins, Kol tzarchei milah la'asuyei mai? What does it come to include? Answers the Gemara, la'asuyei ho. It comes to include the following, the Tanu Rabbanon. Hamal, one who makes Bris Milah, Kol zman shehu oisek b'milah choizer bein al hatzitzin hama'akvin es hamilah, bein al hatzitzin she'ein ma'akvin es hamilah. It states over here in the Brisa that once a person is doing the Bris Milah, so that person, so long as he's oisek in the Bris Milah, there are things that are called tzitzin, the small pieces of skin that still jut out and are not cleanly cut off. So those that are ma'akvin es ha-mitzvah, that means if the majority are covering the atara, that's ma'akiv the mitzvah. And those that are not ma'akiv the mitzvah, because it's not a majority, it's only a miut, can be removed so long as he's still involved, he's oisek in making the milah. However, the Brisa goes on to say, Pirash, If he then took away his hand, he was no longer involved, he took an interruption, then al tzitzin ha-ma'akvin es hamila chayzer. Al tzitzin she'ein ma'akvin es hamila ein chayzer. The tzitzin that are ma'akvin, those that are, again, there are a majority, covering majority part of the atara, those can be removed because that's for the mitzvah of bris milah itself. Otherwise, if it's not ma'akev v'sam mitzvah, then it's not doiche Shabbos anymore, and one cannot then remove that. So that's what our Mishnah is coming to include when it says you can go ahead and do kol tzarche milah. Ask the Gemara, man tana pirosh eina chayzer. Who is the tana who holds that once you make an interruption, you can no longer be chayzer and take off the tzitzin that are not ma'akvin es ha-mitzvah? Omar Rabbi bar Barchan, Omar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yishmael ben Noi, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broikahi. It's Rabbi Shmuel ben Noi, the son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika. He is the author of our Mishnah, who states that indeed once you're paresh, the Gemara is suggesting that you can no longer take out the tzitzin that are not ma'akvi. The Tanya, because it says in the following brayso, Arba sar shechalios b'Shabbos. Mafshit Adam HaPesach ad HaChazei div Rabbi Shmuel b'Noi Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika v'chachomim oimrim mafshitin es kula. We saw this Mishnah before being quoted, and it's talking about over here when you Dalid Nisan comes out to be on Shabbos, and there's a chiyuv for a person to bring a carbon Pesach. So to shech the carbon Pesach certainly can be done. Certain things, however, can also be done. Certain things cannot be done. So in regards to then being mafshit the or, taking out the or, so there's a machlokes in this Mishnah, how much or can you go ahead and flay from the animal? So according to Rabbi Yishmael ben Noi, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nosha, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika, he says, Rabbi Yishmael ben Nosha, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika says that just enough to remove the emorim that would then be put on the mizbeach. And therefore, so long as you can then go ahead and remove the emorim so that they will not get stuck to the wool or the hair of the animal, that's going to be sufficient for the mitzvah. And therefore, only until the chest of the animal. Now, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nosha, Rabbi Shmuel ben Nosha, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka says that only until the chest, and subsequently once that is flayed, so then the procedure would be that they would take off the head of the animal, and they would do other things, and then they would go back to then flailing it according to the Chachamim. According to Rabbi Shmuel ben Nosha, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika, that would be considered to be an interruption, whereby if you would go back to flaying the animal, then that itself would be considered to be like a new aspect, a new type of flaying of being mafshit the or. In other words, the Gemara is suggesting that he therefore is the same opinion that we have over here. Once you made an interruption, in the case of the bris milah, you can no longer take out the tzitzin that are not ma'akvin es ha-mitzvah. Ask the Gemara, are you mimai? How can we indeed say that this is so? Because ad kan lo ka'omar Rabbi Yishmael ben Nosha, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika hasa mishum d'lo ba'inin zeh keli va'anveyu. Aval hocha d'moinin zeh keli va'anveyu hochi nami. In regards to the mitzvah of milah, it's a mitzvah that you want to beautify the mitzvah. And therefore, over there, in the case of the carbon Pesach, there's no need to further beautify the carbon. Once a person flays the skin, by mafshit the skin enough to take out the emurim, that's going to be sufficient. So there's no inyan of zeh keli va'anveyu to beautify the mitzvah. But over here in milah there is, and therefore Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika, Rabbi Shmuel ben Nosha, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika, he can indeed require that you can go ahead and still remove the tzitzin that are not ma'akfin. The Tanya, because it states in regards to this mitzvah zeh keli va'anveyu, hisnoe lefonav b'mitzvahs. You should beautify HaKadosh Baruch Hu through the mitzvahs. Aseh lefonav sukkah noah. Make a sukkah that's beautiful. V'lulav noah, and a lulav that is beautiful. V'shoifar noah, and blow a shofar that is beautiful. Tzitzis noah, and the tzitzis should be beautiful. Sefer Torah noah, a sefer Torah should also be beautiful. V'kosav bo lishmoi, b'diyoy noah, with beautiful ink. B'kulmos noah, with a beautiful pen, quill. Lav lavar uman, with somebody who's an expert writer, soifer. V'karcha b'shiroin noyin, and wrap it up with silk that is noyin, so it looks beautiful. Abashol oimer ve'anvei, when it says zekeli ve'anvei, and Klal Yisrael pointed zekeli ve'anvei when they crossed the Yam Suf, so he learns that the word anveu really is a contraction of two words. It's ani vehu. They saw Kadosh Baruch Hu, the revelation of Hashem, so clearly they said ani vehu. We want to then say zekeli, this is my Hashem ve'anveu. So in addition to the first pshat that we will glorify him with the mitzvahs, anvei, we will be then similar to him. Ani v'hu, I will be like him. Havei doimeloi, mahu chanu v'rachum, af ato hei chanu v'rachum. Just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu is compassionate and he's merciful, so too I will also be somebody who's compassionate and merciful. So we're left with then the question, who then is indeed our Mishnah? Because we suggest that Rabbi Shmuel ben Noshe Rabbi Yechon ben Broka, we said that that's not the case because perhaps in regards to mitzvahs milah, it's zekeli v'anveu. Elomar v'ashi hamani Rabbi Yosi. Rather, he's suggesting it's Rabbi Yosi, who is the author of our Mishnah, that says you can go ahead and remove the tzitzin even if they're not ma'akiv once you're paresh. This nan states bein shenire ba'alil, bein shelo nire ba'alil mechanes haShabbos. In regards to then the excuse me, giving edus to the moon, a new moon. So if it's be'alil, that you can see it openly, that means that everybody can see it clearly. It's a clear night, and you don't have to be even in the confines, far away from Yerushalayim. You can even be in the confines of Yerushalayim. Or bein shelo nirin be'alil, or you don't see it so clearly, only if you're further away from Yerushalayim. So the Tanna Kama says that it's still a mitzvah to go ahead and give edus, even if you can see can from a place from outside the tchum, you can go ahead and still report the edus and go into Yerushalayim, even in a situation where it's ba'alil, where every people even in Yerushalayim would have seen the moon. Whereas Rabbi Yossi Omer im nir ba'alil ein mechal nasa Shabbos. If you see the moon ba'alil, it's a clear night, then you're not able to mechal the Shabbos because people in the area of Yerushalayim will have seen it, and therefore it doesn't then allow a person to then go beyond the tchum outside of Yerushalayim to then come into Yerushalayim and give edus. So the Gemara understands now that the same way that this opinion of Yossi says that would be then considered to be an chilul Shabbos for one to then to come into Yerushalayim, because it would be unnecessary for the mitzvah itself, because other people could also give edus. So too, then the Gemara understanding that Rabbi Yossi would be the same opinion as our Mishnah. He would be the author that says that once a person is paresh from doing the bris milah, although there is still tzitzim, but if they're not ma'akev es ha-mitzvah, so then he cannot go ahead and then cut them off, because that's no longer for the mitzvah itself. The mitzvah itself was already performed, and therefore, this is our author. The Gemara then rejects this as well. Dilma ad kan loy kama Rabbi Yossi hasam dilo nitna Shabbos lidchos. Maybe Rabbi Yossi, in regards to the moon, there he says his din because it doesn't even begin to be doiches haShabbos. It wasn't given to be doiches haShabbos in such a situation when it's a clear night. Aval hocha de nitna Shabbos lidchos hochinami. But over here, in regards to Milah, since it begins over here, when a person begins doing the bris milah, certainly it's doiches Shabbos. So therefore, even if he would be paresh, he can go back to then cutting off those tzitzin that are not ma'akev es ha-mitzvah, because he began beheter. Elomar neher doi. The Gemara now brings a third suggestion. Who is the author of our Mishnah? Again, that says that once one is paresh, he can no longer go ahead and remove the tzitzin that are not ma'akev es ha-mitzvah. Rabbanon the pliga lev de Rabbi Yossi. This is the Rabban who argue on Rabbi Yossi in another place. This it says in the following Mishnah in regards to the lechem panim. The lechem panim had 12 showbreads. There were 6 on each side, keneged the shvatim, and they would be baked on Erev Shabbos, and they would then be placed on the shulchan for Shabbos, the old breads would be given to the kohanim to be eaten. So the Mishnah says like this: Arba kohanim nichnosin. 4 kohanim would enter. Shnayim biyodam shnei sidorim. 2 of them would have in their hands. Each one would have a seder, means would have 6 loaves. Vishnayim biyodam shnei vazichin. And 2 kohanim would have one. Each one would have 1 scoopful of zichin, which is referring to the frankincense that would be put on the lechem. Ve'arba makdimin lifneim. There are 4 that would precede, 4 kohanim that would precede these 4. Shnayim litol shnei sidarim. 2 that would take out 2 sidarim, each one taking 6 loaves. Vishnayim litol shnei bazichin. And 2 would be taking 2 spoonfuls of frankincense. Hamachnisin oimdin bitzafon ufneim lidarim. The 4 that were machnisin, that would then put the new showbreads and the new zichin, they would stand on the north side of the shulchan, and they would face the south, which was considered to be the more important position. Vehamoitzin, and those who would then take out the old showbreads, they would stand on the south side of the shulchan, and they would face the north side. These would then take out the old breads, while the others would then place immediately the new breads. The hand of this one would go alongside the hand of the other one. Mishum shenemar lifnei Hashem tamid. Because according to Tanna Kama, since the pasuk says it be lifnei Hashem tamid, understands that the breads should always be there without any interruption. Rabbi Yossi argues and says, Afilu elu noitlin ve'elu manichin. Even these that would be noitlin, that means that they would take, while others sometime later would then place, the kohanim would place the new breads in their place, but there would be a lapse in between. Because according to Rabbi Yossi, this would also be considered to be tamid, even though it's not the same tamid that the Tanna Kama learns, but he learns that it's good enough to be considered to be tamid, so long as it's not staying overnight without bread inside of the shulchan. So here the Tanna Kama requires that tamid be instantaneous, that at every single moment in time there are showbreads in the shulchan. Therefore, if one would then remove and have some time that would lapse in between, that would be considered to be an interruption. So Gemara understands the same way that these Chachamim who argue in Rabbi Yossi say that tamid means that it has to be without any interruption, that the breads are switched from one to the next, from the old ones to the new ones. Otherwise, it's considered to be an interruption. So too, they are the ones who say that once a person does a bris milah, once he performs the bris milah, although there may be tzitzin, but if those tzitzin are not ma'akev as a mitzvah, they already performed the mitzvah, then that would be considered to be an interruption. That means that if he would go back after he's parish to then remove the tzitzin that are not ma'akev, that would be considered to be no longer part of the initial mitzvah of milah, and therefore this is our Tana, and that's how the Gemara then identifies our Tana to be the Chachamim, the Tanna Kama of Rabbi Yossi. The Gemara now brings the following Brisa Tanu Rabbanon Mahal Kitin Es Hamila, literally gathering together the milah, but means removing the tzitzin that are ma'akev es hamila. V'im loy, and if one does not do that, hilket onosh kores, then he's going to be chayiv kores. Ask the Gemara, mani, who are we referring to? Rav Kahana uman. Rav Kahana understands that we're referring to over here in the Brisa that here a person will be chayiv kores on Shabbos if he is not going to remove the tzitzin or ma'akev esamila, because after all he didn't then perform the bris milah properly. Here you have tzitzin that are going to be a roiv majority on the covering the atara, whereby the mitzvah milah is not performed, and therefore he did a chabala on Shabbos, which is a malach of netilas neshama, and therefore he's going to be chayiv kores. Maskiv l'Rapapa. But Papa asks, Uman, we're talking about the Uman, the one who did the procedure of the bris milah. let him say to them, Ana avdi palga de mitzvah. I did the first part of the mitzvah, which was mutter to be done on Shabbos. In other words, I removed the orla. Atun avdistu palga de mitzvah. You do the second half. And therefore, why should the Uman be held responsible in Chayiv Kores? He did his part, which was not going to be Chayiv for doing Chabbalah, because he did it beheter. Elom Rapape Gadol. Rather, Rapape understand, no, we're not talking about the Kares because the person was Mechal Shabbos. We're talking about the Kares because he did not perform the Bris Milah. And on himself, they're talking about a Gadol who's beyond the age of 13, who's chayiv to make a bris milah. If he did not then remove the tzitzin that are ma'akiv ves ha-mitzvah, then he's going to be chayiv kores. Frek the Gemara maski for Rav Ashi Gadol behedzik sivbe. A Gadol, it says specifically and explicitly in the Torah. Ve'orel zachar asher lo yimol. It says in the Torah that an orel, if he does a zachar, he does not go ahead and remove the orla. The person goes on to say v'nichrasu, he'll have kores. Elo Amar Ashi Lo'olam Uman. We're going back to what we said before. We're talking about an Uman, the one who performed the bris milah on Shabbos. Ukigon, we're talking about a situation. The Asu ben Hashmoshois the Shabbos. Va'amr lei lo mesafkas. He did it right before the end of Shabbos. He waited till right before ben Hashmoshois, and the people told him, "You're not going to have enough time to perform the bris milah," and he did it anyways. Va'amr lu masafkina. I will have enough time. He thought that you can do it. V'ovad, and he did it, v'lo yistapak, and he didn't have enough time. V'ishtakach dechabura hu da'avid v'anush kores. It came out that he then performed a chabura because he did not perform the full bris milah on Shabbos, whereby he's going to be chayiv kores. The Gemara now quotes the Mishnah of Moitzitzin to extract the blood. We said so it should not coagulate. Omar Rapapa said, "Hi umno the lomaitz sakonohu va'avrinonle." This moel who doesn't do metzitza, who doesn't extract the blood, we're talking about even during the week, of course, when bris milah is performed, then he is then putting the child, the nimol, in sakona, and we remove him. Ask the Gemara Pshita mideko mechale ale shabto sakonohu. The fact that we can mechal Shabbos to do motzitzin, to do mitzitza and extract the blood, certainly it means to say that there's a sakana over here. It must be because pikuach nefesh. Mao, the same of what you might have thought to say, hi dam mifkad pokin. No, the blood over here is blood that is underneath the skin, under the surface over there. But when you take it out, you're not making chabura. It was already there, it's just sitting there. Komash malan chaburi michbar. Indeed, he's making a chabura when he done is moitzitzin. And therefore, you might have thought that this is not considered to be something that is a malacha. It is a malacha. And it's similar to what the Mishnah says, that you can put the bandage and cumin on the makam milah. Just as if one did not put that on. It would be putting the nimol in sakana. So too, if a person do mitzitza and draw the blood out, he'd be putting the nimul in sakana. The Mishnah goes on to say that you can place a bandage on the makam milah on Shabbos. Omar Abaye Amar Li Aim. He says that my mother, he was really an orphan, so he refers to the one who raised him. Isplanisa de kulhun kive. She said that a bandage that you put for all types of pains, shav minoi tarba v'chada kiro. It's 7 parts of fat and 1 part of wax. Rava says kiro v'kalba. Rava said it would be waxed with kalba. Darsha Rava mechuza. Rava made a drasha in mechuza, and he said Karinu b'nei, and he made a drasha revealing various medical procedures, things that are going to be therapeutic. So it says Karinu b'nei menyumi asya lamanayhu. It says the people, a family that were physicians, they began rending their garment, they began tearing their clothes out of agony because they were going to then lose money for their services. Omar lehu, Rava said to them, Shavki lechuchada. Right? He says, I left for you one. I didn't reveal one of the secrets of medicinal therapeutic procedure. The Omar Shmuel, for Shmuel taught, Haiman de Mashi Ape v'lo nagiv tuva niktere le haspanisa. He says that if a person were to wash his face and not clean it very well, not dry his skin very well, then it will then reveal different boils on his skin. My takante, on top of Kuf Lamed Aleph, what is the remedy for such a thing? Nimshi tuva b'maya de silka. He should take beets and cook them, and take the water then, and he should then place it, a lot of that water, on those areas of his face. And that will remove the boils that were produced as a result of not wiping off the water that he washed his face with.